Joining us now for World Brief and the review of some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is our princess from Ijebuland, Adefemi Akinsanya. Good morning, Adefemi.
Good morning, Dr. Reuben. We're just a few days away from your special day.
What's that?
2 days.
What's that your ruling house?
My own?
Yeah.
Fidikote.
Fidikote.
Yes.
Ọmọ Fidikote. Ọ̀rọ̀ pọ̀. Ọmọ ọ̀rọ̀ pọ̀. Ọmọ ọ̀rọ̀ pọ̀ níjẹ̀bú Òde.
Oh, gosh.
Ọmọ Agagaluga.
My heritage is safe in your hands. I'm
Ọmọ
so proud.
Fidikote.
Good morning, that's me. Good morning to you all. Good morning to you viewers. Let me tell you what is happening around the world. Now, Zohran Mamdani has become New York City's first Muslim and youngest mayor in a century. The 34-year-old defeated former governor Andrew Cuomo, who ran as a third-party candidate. Now, the Democratic Socialist was able to energize progressives in the city and across the country while generating intense backlash from President Donald Trump and Republicans, as well as some Democratic moderates. Well, the victory caps a meteoric rise through New York politics for Mamdani since he launched his campaign roughly 1 year ago, transforming him from a virtually unknown state assemblyman who barely registered in polling to the incoming leader of America's largest city. Now, he has had to have a lot to say to fellow New Yorker, US President Donald Trump. Let's take a listen to what he did say.
After all, if anyone can show a nation betrayed by Donald Trump how to defeat him, it is the city that gave rise to him. And if there is any way to terrify a despot, it is by dismantling the very conditions that allowed him to accumulate power. This is not only how we stop Trump, it's how we stop the next one. So Donald Trump, since I know you're watching, I have 4 words for you. Turn the volume up. So hear me, President Trump, when I say this. To get to any of us, you will have to get through all of us.
Oh, it was an electrifying speech there. Well, staying in US politics, and tributes have continued to come in for Dick Cheney. He is considered one of America's most powerful and polarizing vice presidents who died on Tuesday following complications with pneumonia and cardiac arrest. He was 84 years old. Now, he had suffered 5 heart attacks and received a heart transplant over the years. That being said, Cheney was widely considered the architect of the US war against terror under George W. Bush, but he also served under former President George Bush Sr. as defense chief during the Gulf War, the Persian Gulf War. Now, despite being a Republican, you'll remember that Cheney said that he would vote for Kamala Harris for president against Trump, and his daughter, Liz Cheney, was a staunch critic of Trump's re-election campaign. Now, Trump said nothing really in the immediate hours after Cheney's death was announced, so the White House did lower flags to half-staff in remembrance of him, but without the usual announcement or proclamation praising the deceased. And again, the United States finds its way in our World Brief. The United States says China will not dictate its foreign policy. That is after China warned against foreign interference in Nigeria's internal affairs. That follows threats, of course, by US President Donald Trump to launch military action over these alleged persecution of Christians. Now, speaking at a press conference in Beijing on Tuesday, Mao Ning, who's the spokesperson for China's foreign ministry, she did say that China firmly supports the Nigerian government as it leads its people on the development path suited to its national conditions. As Nigeria's comprehensive strategic partner, the relationship essentially is firmly opposed to any country using religion and human rights as an excuse to interfere in any other country's internal affairs, and it threatens other countries with sanctions and force, essentially that they shouldn't threaten other countries with sanctions or force. Now, this is a sentiment clearly echoed by Nigeria's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Yusuf Tugar, who says that state involvement in religious persecution is impossible, he says, in Nigeria under Nigeria's laws and constitution. He was speaking in Berlin alongside his German counterpart, Johann Wadepool. Tuggar did point to Nigeria's constitutional commitment towards religious freedom and rule of law. Let's take a listen to what our foreign minister had to say on this topic.
Nigeria's constitutional commitment to religious freedom and rule of law. All the answers are in there. And this is what guides us. And this is what shows that it's impossible for there to be a religious persecution that can be supported in any way, shape, or form by the government of Nigeria at any level, be it federal, be it regional, be it local. It's impossible. And our laws are there, and all the answers lie in this. And
Now, here's a story for the parents. Now, there is definitely a win on the horizon. That is as a 14-year-old British boy who took his parents to court after they sent him to boarding school in Ghana. They're saying that he must remain there until at least the end of his GCSEs. That's according to a High Court judge ruling. Now, the boy, who cannot be named for legal reasons because he is 14, was taken to Ghana in March in 2024 after he was told that he'd be visiting a sick relative. But it was all a ruse. In fact, his parents wanted him to move there after concerns about his behavior in London, which included absences from school, having unexplained money, and carrying a knife. Now, this is according to court papers. The boy himself denies ever being part of a gang or carrying a weapon. But after saying he was unhappy and homesick in Ghana, he did find public-funded lawyers and brought a case against his parents to the High Court in London in February. He did lose that first bid to return when the High Court judge ruled that he was at risk of suffering greater harm if he returned to the United Kingdom. Then in June, he did win a Court of Appeal bid to have the case reheard after the most senior judge in the family division, that is Sir Andrew McFarlane, said there had been confusion in the previous decision. Now, on Tuesday, the High Court handed down its judgment, which ruled against the boy's wishes, citing ongoing disruption, including to his schoolwork and to his family life. So unfortunately for him, he will be staying in Ghana for the time being. Now, I would love to hear from our parents on the panel, and Rufai too. But before we do that, let's take a look at our papers today. As ever, we begin with the front page of This Day. And This Day does lead with news that, as we've heard in the World Brief, that China has rejected planned US military action. The European Union is also standing by Nigeria, calling all of this an unacceptable interference in Nigeria's internal affairs. Going on to what the European Union specifically said, it declared its support for Nigeria and it stressed the need for diplomacy and dialogue. And if we take a look at our picture headline to this same effect, we've got the AIG, which is Omolara Oloruntola on the far left here. You've got Enugu State Governor Peter Mba in the middle, and Ogun State Governor, our very own Prince Dapo Abiodun. All of them discussing the importance of policing and security, looking at training facilities here in Lagos yesterday. Let's move on to the New Telegraph this morning. Now, the New Telegraph continues on with this line of China and China's declaring its support for Nigeria. I was listening to your analysis at the beginning of the show, which, keeps a critical eye on the motivations behind China's support. We wouldn't want a situation where any country is able to benefit from chaos happening in Nigeria, but definitely China is throwing its support behind Nigeria's sovereignty on the surface level, at least there. And let's take a look at the Daily Trust this morning. The Daily Trust does lead with, again, the president's request for Senate approval for a 1.15 trillion naira loan. Now, this is from the domestic market in order to finance part of this 2025 budget deficit. This comes just days after lawmakers approved a $2.8 billion external loan, sparking fresh concerns over Nigeria's rising debt profile, which is now exceeding 97 trillion naira. To The Guardian this morning. The Guardian does lead with President Tinubu declaring a state of emergency in police and security training facilities. We did see a picture of the Ogun State Governor, Enugu State Governor, and the AIG yesterday. That was on the front page of this day, and that is a story that continues on the front page of The Guardian. Essentially, they are decrying the poor state of facilities, and the committee has 30 days to submit its report, and it will oversee the rebuilding and equipping of training centres to support the recruitment of 30,000 new police officers. So yes, a lot has been happening when it comes to Nigeria's security apparatus in the last couple of days. Let's move over to The Punch. The Punch reports that Nigerians will spend almost 1 trillion naira extra for petrol yearly. That is off the back of this 15% tariff. Essentially, fuel marketers have opposed petrol price increases. We've got Otedola backing Tinubu's 15% tariff amid inflation concerns. So a lot happening there when it comes to making sure that Nigerians aren't paying through the ear and the nose when it comes to fuel here in the country. Let's move over to another story from the Vanguard. Now, the Vanguard's headline does read, "Strike." Up here, strike. We've met ASU's demands. That is the federal government saying that. Now, it is insisting that it has met nearly all its academic staff union of universities' demands, describing this recent strike as unnecessary. Now, the Education Minister, Dr. Maruf Tunji Alausa, has said talks with the union are ongoing and insists that President Tinubu has directed that no further strikes should disrupt academic activities. Now, the front page also features a photo of President Tinubu receiving the Archbishop Ignatius Kaigama, who is the Catholic Archbishop of Abuja, again making the world see that the president and Nigeria is taking these claims very seriously. Let's move over to some UK papers now. Now, the UK Guardian has Health Secretary Wes Streeting saying that, well, really warning against these ugly examples of racism resurfacing in Britain, with the NHS staff facing racist abuse and violence from patients. Now, you'll know that many Nigerians work within the Nigerian Health Service in the United Kingdom, so this is something that definitely would affect them, something that they experience. And West Streeting did condemn politicians fueling the divide and warned that the NHS could be overwhelmed by the COVID, flu and strikes this winter, so they definitely need all of the support they can get. Let's move over to the Daily Mail this morning. Now, the Daily Mail has a very interesting story. We're looking at education. Of course, Rachel Reeves passed it all over British papers, but this is the story that kind of drew my attention to it. Labour is dumbing down schools. Now, this is through this idea that the Labour government wants to scrap tough GCSE reforms and the English Baccalaureate in favour of creative and diverse subjects. Now, Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson says that the change will modernise learning, but critics warn that they will lower standards and undo years of academic progress. I mean, it's a very interesting topic. People always speak negatively about creative subjects, about the humanities, but they are all important in my opinion. So from our Well Brief to our newspaper review, those are them. Let's hear your thoughts.
Okay. Congratulations, Zora Mamdani. The last time somebody around this age did win the mayoral election was 1917.
Yes.
None of us on this table were alive then. So congratulations. But it's the campaign of calumny that Trump held against Mamdani that failed. It's the billionaire mites, even the likes of Mike Bloomberg and everybody in the democratic establishment that never supported him. I said he was so socialist that failed.
Yes.
And that's the sad reality. And I'm happy. For good measure, Trump also did endorse Cuomo.
He did.
Somebody they were fighting during COVID. So you can see politics is about interests, where your interests lie. So I'm happy, but Mamdani must ensure he fights for the people. He comes from a long line of successful people. His mother was the director of Queen of Katwe.
Right.
Yes,
Yeah,
the popular movie. So she's A-grade, movie maker and all of that. He's going to be very socialist. He's going to take taxes from the rich and put to the poor. What I call Robin Hood economics. I don't have problems with that, but I also will say you should also be careful because you need the rich. They bring about growth. Real quickly, Femi, you want me to come here and celebrate Dick Cheney in death? Dick Cheney? Are you kidding me? You see, when I was talking about interests of China and EU,
Yes.
America too have their own interests. So that's why let's not just listen to all what Trump is saying, because America too has their own interests in Nigeria.
Yes.
Dick Cheney was asked by Andrew Marr Give us evidence that there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. They couldn't.
Dollar. Yeah.
Dollar. They can't. They just invaded that country. And you know why they invaded that country? For their own selfish benefit. Dick Cheney was the chairman of Halliburton. Fact check me, Femi. A subsidiary of Halliburton collected a $39 billion contract for the reconstruction of Iraq and Afghanistan. They also went into the place to get oil with no concession. Dick Cheney was the chairman of Halliburton. So you can see how the lives of the people in Iraq and Afghanistan were plunged for selfish interest. I'm not saying I support Saddam Hussein. But you can see the pretext and the lies at which America got in there. When Andrew Ma asked him, give us the evidence. Nothing. Dollar.
Nothing at all.
All right, Zoran Mamdani, the man who has made history in the United States of America. He was born in Uganda and moved to the United States with his family at age 7. In fact, he only naturalized as a United States citizen in 2018. So he's only been naturalized. No, he came into politics in 2018. And so he's only been there for, in politics, active politics for 7 years. He has strong ties to his own back home. But the thing about New York, as Jay-Z and Alicia Keys sang in their song Empire State of Mind, it's New York, concrete jungle where dreams are made of. So I can't sing, but there's nothing you cannot do, and that is New York. New York is the most diverse city in America. It is the most populated city in America.
Yes.
It is a political powerhouse in America. In fact, a number of governors and politicians in New York have gone on to be president, or vice president in the United States of America. So you can understand why there's a lot of attention on this particular race, and of course why and of course the status of the mayor. Also beyond that is the fact that right now we're having two very popular cities in the world, New York and London, having their first Muslim mayors, and this speaks very loudly, particularly because America is at a point where the president is leading this charge of Make America Great Again, America First, and his own definition of what America should look like. It's quite difficult to translate that to New York, where they speak hundreds of languages based on how multi-diverse it is. But it's not just about the personality of the man. He's married to a Syrian American, by the way, who's stayed largely in the background, a Gen Z couple, the first Gen Z couple at that level in a century, like we've already alluded to. But I think very importantly is what he has in store for the people. Strong men like Obama have spoken up to him and advised him to get straight to the work of governance. That very critical would be his first 100 days in office. He was elected on the platform of vibes and the youth and Gen Z friendliness. But the most important thing for the people of New York would be what he would do first in his first 100 days, and then his promises, especially number one, his promise of free transportation. We often talk about transportation in the city, especially because of how dense the population is. And then, of course, housing and reducing cost of living for people in New York City. Especially, he said that he's going to have government-owned grocery stores to hopefully reduce the cost of food, which is quite a key subject right now in the United States of America. So, yes, he's won. Yes, his speech was electrifying. Yes, he is the depiction of the American dream, where people can come from anywhere around the world and make it, and fulfill their dreams. But very importantly would be how well he would lead, how well he would govern. And this is the advice that a number of political heavyweights have given to him, the charge that they've given to him. But congratulations on this feat.
Okay, very quickly, quite so many topics. Let me see what I can run through very quickly. Let's start with Dick Cheney. Okay. We commiserate with the people of the United States on the loss of Dick Cheney, who was one of the most important political figures in the 20th century in the United States, and particularly within the Republican Party. Even if he ended his career on the wrong side of the Republican Party, Donald Trump, having taken over and having changed, the look and feel of that political party. He started his career as a member of the House of Representatives and was a member of the House of Reps from 24 to 34. At the age of 34, Dick Cheney became chief of staff to Gerald Ford. After that, he served George Bush Sr. As Secretary of Defense, and he was in charge of Pentagon, when you had all those issues with Iraq. He would later become, the vice president to George W. Bush. That's Bush the son. And look, the major thing was that he redefined the vice presidency, because he was not just a vice president, sitting in the shadows. He was a de facto deputy president, because he took charge and provided leadership in terms of the security process. And it was the major voice with regard to September 11.
Yes.
He was also the one who spoke about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. And, many people think that because of that, his legacy is very controversial. Iraqi writer Sunan Antum has written that, he was an apostle of chaos and terrorism. The other major issue was that he was for the better part of his life as a Republican, but he turned against Donald Trump. In fact, in the last presidential election, he supported Kamala Harris. Yes. And that is why, Trump has not even issued a statement as at this moment. Maybe he has in the last 1 hour or so that we started this program. But we have received tributes from George W. Bush, who says that he was a man who served his country very well. There's been a tribute from Condoleezza Rice, who has also praised him. There's also been a tribute from Bill Clinton. But the issue, of course, is that his legacy is very controversial. Some people think that he was a warmonger and that nobody ever found the weapons of mass destruction. Now, as for Zumra Mamdani, the youngest man to become mayor of New York in more than a century, the first Muslim, the first South Asian, is 34. So he represents a generation that is different. A few months ago, nobody knew him. But he overtook everybody in the polls. In fact, a hip-hop artist, a housing counselor, a member of the House of Reps at a time. Now, he suddenly, Mayor Eric Adams had to withdraw. Andrew Cuomo decided to run as an independent, and he lost to him. It was only Silva, the Republican candidate, who in fact, conceded even before the final results were announced. However, he faces a number of issues. He says he's running on the platform of affordability, universal health care, free buses. How is he going to fund it? Particularly now that Donald Trump says that he's a communist and that if he wins, the federal government will not give him federal funding. 2, he doesn't have significant executive experience. That in itself, is a major issue. But it's a very important development that, young voters, the Gen Z, as you call them, they are the ones who have supported him. But the contest is important. The off-year elections that you had yesterday in Virginia, in New Jersey, and the Proposition 50 process in California. Yes. With, the Democrats having their way in Virginia, in New Jersey, in New York, where you had the mayoral election. This says something about the midterm elections that will come up next year. A number of other issues, but we seem not to have time. The topics are too many. But I'll just leave it here.
Significant topics, and we will continue to speak about what's happening in the United States of America and, of course, what's dominated the headlines this morning very shortly. But thank you, Adefemi.
Always a pleasure.
Always.